Chapter 27 of The Worm Ouroboros. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jason Mills. The Worm Ouroboros by E.R. Eddison. Chapter 27. The Second Expedition to Impland. How the Lord Juss, not to be persuaded from his set purpose, found, where least it was to be looked for, upholding in that resolve, and of the sailing of the armament to Muelva, by way of the Straits of Melikafkaz. That was the last ember of red summer burning when they cut them that harvest on Crothering side. Autumn came, and winter months, and the lengthening days of the returning year. And with the first breath of spring were the harbours filled with ships of war, so many as had never in former days been seen in the land. And in every countryside from the western isles to Bailand, from Shalgreth and Kelioland to the headlands under Rimmon Armon, were soldiers gathered with their horses, and all instruments of war. Lord Brandok-Dahar rode from the west, the day the pasque flowers first opened on the bluffs below Erngate End, and primroses made sweet the birch forests in Gashtondale. He set forth betimes, and hard he rode, and he rode into Galing by the Lion Gate about the hour of noon. There was Lord Juss in his private chamber, and greeted him with great joy and love. So Brandok-Dahar asked, "What speed?" And Juss answered, 30 ships and 5 afloat in Lookinghaven, whereof all save 4 be dragons of war. Zig I expect tomorrow with the Kelioland levies. Spitfire lieth at Owlswick with 1500 men from the Southlands. Vol came in but 3 hours since with 400 more. In sum I'll have 4000, reckoning ships' companies and our own bodyguards. 8 ships of war have I, said Lord Brandok-Dahar, in Strappardon Firth, all busked and bound. 5 more at Orwath, 5 at Lornegate in Morvay, and 3 on the Mealand coast at Stackray Oise, besides 4 more in the Isles. And I have 1600 spearmen and 600 horse. All these shall come together to join with thine in Lookinghaven at the snapping of my fingers. Give me but 7 days' notice. Juss gripped him by the hand. Bare were my back without thee, he said. In Crothering I've shifted not a stone, nor swept not a chamber clean, said Brandok-Dahar. 'Tis a muck-pit. Every man's hand I might command I set only to this, and now 'tis ready. He turned sharp toward Juss and looked at him a minute in silence. Then, with a gravity that sat not often on his lips, he said, Let me be urgent with thee once more. Strike, and delay not. Do him not again that kindness we did him aforetime, fribbling our strength away on the cursed shores of Impland, and by the charmed waters of Ravery, so as he might as secure as sleep send Corsus hither, and Corineus to work havoc i' the land, and so put on us the greatest shame was ever laid on mortal men, and we not bred up to suffer shame. Thou saidst 7 days, said Juss. Snap thy fingers, and call up thy armies. I'll delay thee not an hour. Ay, but I mean to Carsey, said he. To Carsey, whither else? Said Juss. But I'll take my brother Galdry with us. But I mean first to Carsey, said Brandok-Dahar. Let my opinion sway thee once. Why, a schoolboy should tell thee, clear thy flank and rear ere thou go forward. Juss smiled. I love this new garb of caution, cousin, said he. It doth most prettily become thee. I question, though, whether this be not the true cause, that Corineus took not up thy challenge last summer, but let it lie, and that hath left thee hungry still. Brandok-Dahar looked him sidelong in the eye, and laughed. O Juss, he said, thou hast touched me near. But 'tis not that. That was in the weird that bright lady laid on me, in the Sparrowhawk castle in Impland forlorn, that he I held most in hate should ruin my fair lordship, and that to my hand should vengeance be denied. That I e'en must brook. Oh no, think only, delays are dangerous. Come, be advised, be not mulish. But the Lord Juss's face was grave. Urge me no more, dear friend, said he. Thou sleep'st soft. But to me, when I am cast in my first sleep, cometh many a time the likeness of Galdry Blusco, held by a maleficial charm on the mountain-top of Zora Rach, that standeth apart, out of the sunlight, out of all sound or warmth of life. Long ago I made vow to turn neither to the right nor to the left, until I set him free. He is thy brother, said Lord Brandok-Dahar. Also he is mine own familiar friend, whom I love scarce less than thee. But when thou speakest of oaths, remember there's Lafires too. What shall he think on us after our oath to him 3 years ago, that night in Carsey? Yet this one blow should right him too. He will understand, said Juss. He is to come with Gaslark, and thou toldst me thou dost e'en now expect them, said Brandok the Har. I'll leave you. I cannot for shame say to him, Patience, friend, truly it is not to-day convenient. Thou shalt be paid in time. By heavens, I'd scorn to entreat my mantle-maker so. And this our friend that lost all and languisheth in exile because he saved our lives. So saying, he stood up in great discontent and ire, as if to leave the chamber. But Just caught him by the wrist. Thou dost upbraid me most unjustly, and well thou knowest it in thy heart, and 'tis that makes thee so angry. Hark, the horn soundeth at the gate, and 'tis for Gazlark. I'll not let thee go. Well, said Brandok the Har, have thy will. Only ask not me to plead thy rotten case to them. If I speak, it shall be to shame thee. Now thou art warned. Now they went into the high presence chamber, where were bright ladies not a few, and captains and noble persons from up and down the land, and stood on the dais. Gazlark the king walked up the shining floor, and behind him his captains and counsellors of Goblinland walked 2 by 2. The Prince Lafaires strode at his elbow, proud as a lion. Blithely they greeted those lords of Demonland that rose up to greet them beneath the starry canopy, and the Lady Mevrian that stood betwixt her brother and Lord Juss, so as 'twere hard to say which of the 3 was fairest to look on, so much they differed in their beauty's glory. Gro, standing near, said in himself, I know a 4th, and were she but joined with these, then were the crown of the whole earth's loveliness fitted in this one chamber, in a right casket surely, and the gods in heaven, if there be gods indeed, should go pale for envy, having in their starry gallery no fair to match with these, not Phoebus Apollo, not the chaste huntress, nor the foam-born queen herself. But Gazlark, when his eye lighted on the long black beard, the lean figure slightly stooping, the pallid brow, the curls smoothed with perfumed unguents, the sickle-like nose, the great liquid eyes, the lily hand, he, beholding and knowing these of old, waxed in a moment dark as thunder, with the blood rush beneath his sun-browned skin, and with a great sweep snatched out his sword, as if without care or beware to thrust him through. Gro stepped hastily back, but the Lord Juss came between them. Let alone, Juss, cried Gazlark. Knowst not this fellow, what a vile enemy and viper we have here? A pretty perfumed villain, who for so many years did spin me a thread of many seditions and troubles, while his smooth tongue gat money from me still. Blessed occasion! Now will I let his soul out. But the Lord Juss laid his hand on Gazlark's sword-arm. Gazlark, said he, leave off thy rages, and put up thy sword. A year ago thou'dst done me no wrong, but to-day thou'dst have slain me a man of mine own men, and a lord of Demonland. Now when they had done their greetings, they washed their hands and sate at dinner, and were nobly served and feasted. And the Lord Juss made peace betwixt Gro and Gazlark, albeit 'twas no light task to prevail upon Gazlark to forgive him. Thereafter they retired them, with Gazlark and Lafaires, into a chamber apart. Gazlark the king spake and said, None can gainsay it, O Just, that this fight ye won last harvest-tide was the greatest seen on land these many years, and of greatest consequence. But I have heard a bird sing there shall be yet greater deeds done ere many moons be past. Therefore it is we came hither to thee, I and Lafaires, that be your friends from of old, to pray thee let us go with thee on thy quest across the world after thy brother, for sorrow of whose loss the whole world languisheth, and thereafter let us go with you on your going up to Carse. O Juss, said the prince, we would not in after days that men should say, On such a time fared the demons into perilous lands enchanted, and by their strength and valorousness set free the Lord Goldry Blusco, or haply there ended their last days in that glorious quest. But Gazlark and Lafaires were not in it. They bade their friends farewell, hung up their swords, and lived a quiet and merry life in Zajezaculo. So let their memory be forgot. Lord Juss sat silent a minute, as one much moved. O Gazlark, he said at length, I'll take thine offer without another word. But unto thee, dear prince, I must bear mine heart somewhat. For thou here art come not stressed in our quarrel to spend thy blood, only to put us yet deeper in thy debt. And yet small blame it were to thee, shouldst thou in dishonourable sort revile me, as many shall cry out against me, for a false friend unto thee, and a friend forsworn. But the Prince Lafaires brake in upon him, saying, I prithee have done, or thou'lt shame me quite. Whate'er I did in Carse, 'twas but equal payment for your saving of my life in Leda Nanguna. So was all evened up betwixt us. Think then no more on't, but deny me not to go with you to Impland. But up to Carse I'll not go with you. For albeit I am clean broke with Witchland, against Corrund and his kin I will not draw sword, nor against my lady sister. A black curse on the day I gave her white hand to Corrund. She holdeth too much of our stock, methinks. Her heraldry is hearts, not hands, and giving her hand she gave her heart. 'Tis a strange world. Laphyres, said Just, we weigh not so lightly our obligation unto thee. Yet must I hold my course, having sworn a strong oath that I would turn aside neither to the right nor to the left, until I had delivered my brother Goldry out of bondage. So sware I, or ever I went that ill journey to Corsey, and was closed in prison fast, and by thee delivered. Nor shall blame of friends, nor wrongful misprision, nor any power that is, shake me in this determination. But when that is done, no rest remaineth unto us, till we win back for thee thy rightful realm of Pixieland, and many good things besides to be a token of our love. Said the prince, Thou doest right. If thou didst other, thou'dst have my blame. And mine thereto, said Gaslark. Do not I grieve, think'st thou, to see the Princess Armeline, my sweet young cousin, grow every day more wan o' the cheek and pale, and all for sorrows and teen for her own true love, the Lord Goldry Bluscoe, and she so carefully brought up by her mother, as nothing was too dear or hard to be brought to pass for her desire, thinking that a creature so noble and perfect could not be trained up too delicately. I deem to-day better than to-morrow, and to-morrow better than his morrow, to set sail for wide-fronted Impland. All this while the Lord Brandok de Har said never a word. He sat back in his chair of ivory and chrysoprase, now toying with his golden finger-rings, now twisting and untwisting the yellow curls of his mustachios and beard. In a while he yawned, rose from his seat, and fell to pacing lazily up and down. He had hitched up his sword across his back under his 2 elbows, so that the shoe of the scabbard stood out under one arm, and the jewelled hilt under the other. His fingers strummed little tunes on the front of the rich rose velvet doublet that cased his chest. The spring sunlight, as he paced from shine to shade and to shine again, passing the tall windows, seemed to caress his face and form. It was as if spring laughed for joy, beholding in him one that was her own child, clothed to outward view with so much loveliness and grace, but full besides to the eyes and finger-tips with fire and vital sap, like her own buds bursting in the Brankdale coppices. In a while he ceased his walking, and stood by the Lord Grow, who sat a little apart from the rest. How thinkest thou, Grow, of our counsels? Art thou for the straight road, or the crooked? For Corsey, or Ouroboros? Of the roads, answered Grow, a wise man will choose ever that one which is indirect. For but consider the matter, thou that art a great cragsman. Think our life's course a lofty cliff. I am to climb it, sometime up, sometime down. I pray, whither leadeth the straight road on such a cliff? Why, no whither. For if I will go up by the straight way, 'tis not possible. I am left gaping, whilst thou by crooked courses hast gained the top. Or if down, why, 'tis easy and swift. But then, no more climbing evermore for me. And thou, clambering down by the crooked way, shalt find me a dead and unsightly corpse at the bottom. Gramercy for thy me's and thees, said Lord Brandok de Har. Well, 'tis a most weighty principle, backed with a most just and lively exposition. How dost thou interpret thy maxim in our present question? Lord Grow looked up at him. My lord, you have used me well, and to deserve your love and advance your fortunes, I have pondered much how you of Demonland might best obtain revenge upon your enemies. And I daily thinking hereupon, and conceiving in my head divers imaginations, can devise no means but one that in my fancy seemeth best, which is this. Let me hear it, said Lord Brandok de Har. Said Grow, 'twas ever a fault in you demons that you would not perceive how 'tis oft times good to draw the snake from her hole by another man's hand. Consider now your matter. You have a great force both for land and sea. Trust not too much in that. Oft hath he of the little force o'ercome most powerful enemies, going about to entrap them by sleight and policy. But consider yet again. You have a thing is mightier far than all your horses and spearmen and dragons of war, mightier than thine own sword, my lord, and thou accounted the best swordsman in all the world. What thing is that? Asked he. Grow answered, Reputation, my Lord Brandok de Har. This reputation of you demons for open dealings, even to your worst enemies. Tush, said he, 'tis but our way i' the world. Moreover, 'tis, I think, a thing natural in great persons, of whatsoever country they be born. Treachery and double-dealing proceed commonly from fear, and that is a thing which I think no man in this land comprehendeth. Myself, I do think that when the high gods made a person of my quality, they traced 'tween his 2 eyes something, I know not what, which the common sort durst not look upon without trembling. Give me but leave, said Lord Grow, and I'll pluck you a braver triumph in a little hour than your swords should win you in 2 years. Speak smooth words to Witchland, offer him composition, bring him to a council, and all his great men along with him. I'll so devise it, they shall all be suddenly taken off in a night, haply by setting upon them in their beds, or as we may find most convenient. All save Corrund and his sons, them we may wisely spare, and conclude peace with them. It shall not by 10 days delay your sailing to Impland, whither you might then proceed with light hearts and minds at ease. Very prettily conceived, upon my soul, said Brandok de Ha. Might I advise thee, thou'dst best not talk to Juss i' this manner, not now, I mean, while his mind's so bent on matters of weight and moment. Nor I should not say it to my sister Mevrian. Women will oft times take in sad earnest such a conceit, though it be but talk and discourse. With me 'tis otherwise. I am something of a philosopher myself, and thy jest ambleth with my humour very pleasantly. Thou art pleased to be merry, said Lord Grow. Many ere now, as the event hath proved, rejected my wholesome counsels to their own great hurt. But Brandok de Ha said lightly, Fear not, my Lord Grow, we'll reject no honest redes of so wise a counsellor as thou. But, and here was a light in the eye of him made Grow startle, did any man with serious intent dare bid me do a dastard deed, he should have my sword through the dearest part of's body. Lord Brandok de Ha now turned him to the rest of them. Juss, said he, friend of my heart, meseemeth you are all of one mind, and none of my mind. I'll e'en bid you farewell. Farewell, Gaslark, farewell, the Fieries. But whither away? Said Juss, standing up from his chair. Thou must not leave us. Whither but to mine own place, said he, and was gone from the chamber. Gaslark said, He's much incensed. What hast thou done to anger him? Mevrian said to Juss, I'll follow and cool him. She went, but soon returned, saying, No avail, my lords. He is ridden forth from Galing, and away as fast as his horse might carry him. Now were they all in a great stew, some conjecturing one thing and some another. Only the Lord Juss kept silence and a calm countenance, and the Lady Mevrian. And Juss said at length to Gaslark, This it is, that he chafeth at every day's delay that letteth him from having at Corineus. Certes I'll not blame him, knowing the vile injuries the fellow did him, and his insolence toward thee, madam. Be not troubled. His own self shall bring him back to me when time is, as no other power should do against his good will, he whose great heart heaven cannot force with force. And even so, the next night after, when folk were abed and asleep, Juss in his high bedchamber, sitting late at his book, heard a bridle ring. So he called his boys to go with him with torches to the gate. And there in the dancing torchlight came the Lord Brandok de Ha a-riding into Galing Castle, and somewhat of the bigness of a great pumpkin tied in a silken cloth hung at his saddle-bow. Juss met him in the gate alone. Let me down from my horse, he said, and receive from me thy bedfellow, that thou must sleep with by the lake of Ravery. Thou hast gotten it, said Juss. The hippogriff's egg, out of Jewel Tarn, by thyself alone? And he took the bundle right tenderly in his 2 hands. Ay, answered he. 'Twas where thou and I made sure of it last summer, according to the word of her little martlet that first found it for us. The tarn was frozen, and 'twas tricky work diving, and most villainous cold. It is small marvel thou art a lucky man in thine undertakings, O Juss, when thou hast such an art to draw thy friends to second thee. I thought thou'dst not leave me, said Juss. Thought? Cried Brandok de Ha. Didst ever dream I'd suffer thee to do thy foolishnesses alone? Nay, I'll come first to the enchanted lake with thee, and let Bicarsi i' the meantime. Howbeit I'll do it gainst the stream of my resolution quite. Now was but 6 days more of preparation, and on the 2nd day of April was all ready in Looking Haven for the sailing of that mighty armament, 59 ships of war, and 5 ships of burthen, and thrice 2,000 fighting men. Lady Mevrian sat on her milk-white mare, overlooking the harbour, where the ships all orderly rode at anchor, shadowy grey against the sun-bright shimmer of the sea, with here and there a splash of colour, crimson or blue or grass-green, from their painted hulls, or a beam of the sun glancing from their golden masts or figureheads. Grow stood at her bridle rein. The Galing road, winding down from Havershaw Tongue, ran close below them, and so along the seashore to the quays at Looking Haven. Along that road the hard earth rang with the tramp of armed men, and the tramp of horses, and the light west wind wafted to Grow and Mevrian on their grassy hill snatches of deep-voiced battle-chants, or the galloping notes of trumpet and pipe, and the drum that sets men's hearts a-throb. In the van rode the Lord Zig, 4 trumpeters walking before him in gold and purple. His armour from chin to toe shone with silver, and jewels blazed on his gorget and baldric and the hilt of his long straight sword. He rode a black stallion, savage-eyed, with ears laid back and a tail that swept the earth. A great company of horse followed him, and half as many tall spearmen, in russet leather jerkins plated with brass and silver. "These," said Mevrion, "be of Kellialand and the shoresteads of Arrowfirth, and his own vassalage from Ramerick and Amardidale. That is Hesper Golthring rideth a little behind him on his right hand. He loveth two things in this world, a good horse and a swift ship. He on the left, he hath a helm of dull silver set with ravens' wings. So long of the leg thou'd say if he rode a little horse he might straddle and walk it. Stirkmere of Blackwood. He is of our kin. Not yet 20 years old, yet since Crotheringside accounted one of our ablest." So she showed him all as they rode by, Peridor of Sewell, captain of the Melanders, and his nephew Stipmar, Fendor of Shalgrath, with Emmer and Galt, his young brother, that was newly healed from the great wound Corineus gave him at Crotheringside, these leading the shepherds and herdsmen from the great heaths north of Switchwater, who will hold by the stirrup, and so with their light bucklers and little brown swords go into battle with the horsemen full gallop against the enemy. Bremery, in his ram's horn helm of gold and broidered surcoat of scarlet velvet, leading the dalesmen from Onwardlythe and Tiveranderdale. Trentmore of Scorridale, with the north-eastern levies from Byland, and the Strands and Breakingdale. Astor of Rattray, lean and lithe, bony-faced, gallant-eyed, white of skin, with bright red hair and beard, riding his lovely roan at the head of 2 companies of spearmen, with huge iron-studded shields, men from about Drepperby and the south-eastern dales, landed men and home men of Lord Goldry Blusco. Then the island dwellers from the west, with old Quoz of Dolney riding in the place of honour, noble to look on with his snowy beard and shining armour, but younger men their true leaders in war. Melchor of Struthy, great-chested, fierce-eyed, with thick brown curling hair, horsed on a plunging chestnut, his byrnie bright with gold, a rich mantle of creamy silk brocade flung about his ample shoulders, and Thornrod on his little black mare, with silver byrnie and bat's winged helm, he that held Carnarvie in fee for Lord Brandok de Ha, keen and ready like an arrow drawn to the barbs. And after them the Westmark men, with Arnund of Bye their captain. And after them 400 horse, not to be surpassed for beauty or ordered array by any in that great army, and young Camerar riding at their head, burly as a giant, straight as a lance, apparelled like a king, bearing on his mighty spear the pennon of the Lord of Crothering. "Look well on these," said Mevrion as they passed by, "our own men of the Side and Thunderfirth and Strappardon. Thou mayst search the wide world, and not find their like for speed and fire, and all warlike goodliness and readiness to the word of command." "Thou look'st sad, my lord." "Madam," said Lord Groe, "to the ear of one that useth, as I use, to consider the vanity of all high earthly pomps, the music of these powers and glories hath a deep underdrawn of sadness. Kings and governors that do exult in strength and beauty and lustihood and rich apparel, showing themselves for a while upon the stage of the world and open dominion of high heaven, what are they but the gilded summer fly, that decayeth with the dying day?" "My brother and the rest must not stay for us," said the lady. "They meant to go aboard as soon as the army should be come down to the harbour, for their ships be to sail out first down the firth. Is it determined indeed that thou goest with them on this journey?" "I had so determined, madam," answered he. She was beginning to move down towards the road and the harbour, but Groe put a hand on the rein and stopped her. "Dear lady," he said, "these 3 nights together I have dreamed a dream, a strange dream, and all the particulars thereof betokening heavy anxiety, increase of peril, and savage mischief, promising some terrible issue. Methinks if I go on this journey thou shalt see my face no more." "Oh, fie, my lord," cried she, reaching him her hand. "Give never a thought to such fond imaginings. 'Twas the moon but glancing in thine eye. Or if not, stay with us here and cheat fate." Groe kissed her hand, and kept it in his. "My Lady Mevrion," he said, "fate will not be cheated, cog we never so wisely. I do think there be not many extant that in a noble way fear the face of death less than myself. I'll go a this journey. There is but one thing should turn me back." "And 'tis?" said she, for he fell silent on a sudden. He paused, looking down at her gloved hand resting in his. "A man becometh hoarse and dumb," said he, "if a wolf hath the advantage first to eye him. Didst thou procure a wolf to dumb me when I would tell thee?" "But I did once, enough to let thee know. Oh, Mevrion, dost thou remember Neverdale?" He looked up at her. But Mevrion sat with head erect, like her patroness divine, with sweet cool lips set firm, and steady eyes fixed on the haven and the riding ships. Gently she drew her hand from Gro's, and he strove not to retain it. She eased forward the reins. Gro mounted and followed her. They rode quietly down to the road, and saw southward side by side to the harbour. Ere they came within earshot of the quay, Mevrian spake and said, Thou'lt not think me graceless nor forgetful, my lord. All that is mine, ask it, and I'll give it thee with both hands. But ask me not that I have not to give, or if I gave, should give but false gold. For that's a thing not good for thee nor me, nor I would not do it to an enemy, far less to thee, my friend. Now was the army all gotten a shipboard, and farewells said to Vol and those who should abide at home with him. The ships rode out into the firth all orderly, their silken sails unfurled, and that great armament sailed southward into the open seas under a clear sky. All the way the wind favoured them, and they made a swift passage, so that on the 30th morning from their sailing out of Lookinghaven, they sighted the long grey cliff line of Impland the Moor, dim in the low blown spray of the sea, and sailed through the straits of Melikafkaz in column ahead, for scarce might two ships pass abreast through that narrow way. Black precipices shut in the straits on either hand, and the sea-birds in their thousands whitened every little ledge of those cliffs like snow. Great flights of them rose and circled overhead as the ships sped by, and the air was full of their plaints. And right and left, as of young whales blowing, columns of white spray shot up continually from the surface of the sea. For these were the stately-winged gannets fishing that sea-strait. By threes and fours they flew, each following other in ordered line, many mast-heights high, and ever and anon one checked in her flight as if a bolt had smitten her, and swooped head foremost with wings half spread, like a broad-barbed dart of dazzling whiteness, till at a few feet above the surface she clapped close her wings, and cleft the water with a noise as of a great stone cast into the sea. Then in a moment up she bobbed, white and spruce with her prey in her gullet, rode the waves a minute to rest and consider, then with great sweeping wing-strokes up again to resume her flight. After a mile or two the narrows opened, and the cliffs grew lower, and the fleet sped past the red reefs of Uaimnaz and the lofty stacks of Pashnamarthra, white with seagulls, on to the blue solitude of the Didonian Sea. All day they sailed south-east with a failing wind. The coastline of Melikafkaz fell away astern, paled in the mists of distance, and was lost to sight, until only the square cloven outline of the Pashnamarthran Islands broke the level horizon of the sea. Then these too sank out of sight, and the ships rode on south-eastward in a dead calm. The sun stooped to the western waves, entering his bath of blood-red fire. He sank, and all the ways were darkened. All night they rode gently on under the strange southern stars, and the broken waters of that sea at every oar-stroke were like fire burning. Then out of the sea to eastward came the day-star, ushering the dawn, brighter than all night's stars, tracing a little path of gold along the waters. Then dawn, filling the low eastern skies with a fleet of tiny cockle-shells of bright gold fire. Then the great face of the sun ablaze, and with the going up of the sun a light wind sprang up, bellying their sails on the starboard tack, so that ere day declined, the sea-cliffs of Muelva hung white above the spray-mist on their larboard bow. They beached the ships on a white shell-strand behind a headland that sheltered it from the east and north. Here the barrier of cliffs stood back a little from the shore, giving place for a fertile dell of green pasture, and woods clustering at the foot of the cliffs, and a little spring of water in the midst. So for that night they slept on board, and next day made their camp, discharging the ships of burthen that were laden with the horses and stuff. But the Lord Just was minded not to tarry an hour more in Muelva than should suffice to give all needful orders to Gazlark and the Fieries what they should do, and when expect him again, and to make provision for himself and those who must fare with him beyond these shadowing cliffs into the haunted wastes of the Maruna. Ere noon was all this accomplished, and farewells said, and these lords, Just, Spitfire, and Brandok Dahar, set forth along the beach southward towards a point where it seemed most hopeful to scale the cliffs. With them went the Lord Gro, both by his own wish, and because he had known the Maruna aforetime, and these particular parts thereof. And with them went besides those two brothers-in-law, Zig and Astar, bearing the precious burden of the egg, for that honour and trust had just laid on them at their earnest seeking. So with some pains after an hour or more they won up the barrier, and halted for a minute on the cliff's edge. The skin of Gro's hands was hurt with the sharp rocks. Tenderly he drew on his lamb's-wool gloves, and shivered a little, for the breath of that desert blew snell and frore, and there seemed a shadow in the air southward, for all it was bright and gentle weather below whence they were come. Yet albeit his frail body quailed, Even so were his spirits within him raised with high and noble imaginings, as he stood on the lip of that rocky cliff. The cloudless vault of heaven, the unnumbered laughter of the sea, that quiet cove beneath, and those ships of war, and that army camping by the ships. The emptiness of the blasted wolds to southward, where every rock seemed like a dead man's skull, and every rank tuft of grass hag-ridden. The bearing of those lords of Demonland who stood beside him, as if naught should be of commoner course to them pursuing their resolve, than to turn their backs on living land, and enter those regions of the dead. These things, with a power as of a mighty music, made Gro's breath catch in his throat, and the tear spring in his eye. In such wise, after more than 2 years, did Lord Just begin his second crossing of the Maruna, in quest of his dear brother the Lord Goldred Lusco. End of chapter 27.